YouTubers, Bald Rhino back with another incredible PSA vintage reveal. This should be kind of fun. These are going to be 1933 Goudey cards. Obviously, I'm working on the set, have been for probably over 150 years. But anyway, thought you might enjoy this as we enjoy the PSA reset, the Great Reset. I'll share some thoughts as we go, but thought it might be interesting for those who care about vintage to hear a little bit about each of these players. This is Oswald Bluge in a PSA 4. And he was a manager, played third base, was in a front office executive his entire career with the Washington Senators. He was the original Bobby Bonilla because he was on the payroll until 1971. And he was a 1924 World Series champ, so that gives you how long he was being paid. So the original Bobby Bonilla. In fact, he was with the franchise when they were renamed the Twins. So that's kind of a fun card. As it relates to the PSA reset, I've learned now that boxes values are going down as well because obviously you can't break out cards of value because you can't grade them affordably, and most of the modern boxes have very few parallels or rare cards, so it's kind of a double whammy. This is Tony Pete. He was an all-around player, stole a lot of bases and played a lot of games. That was his claim to fame, kind of a mini Iron Man. He was a car dealer after his career in Chicago, and his slogan was, "You can shop for it anywhere, but you'll buy it at Pete." So I thought that was kind of fun. It's a very hard card. I love the fact that it's in the new PSA holder because this is kind of a rough, tough card to find. So there you go. This is Max. Sorry all the glare, but you know, it's hard to find a perfect studio. PSA 4.5, Max Bishop. He was a manager and a player and, interestingly, a scout. He was part of the Philadelphia Athletics dynasty that won 3 consecutive AL pennants from 1929 to 31 and 2 World Series in 29 and 30. So Max lived a pretty good life. I can only imagine what the celebrations must have been like back in those days. This is a card I just really like because the colors are quite unique. This is Watson Clark. Not much to say about him. He was a decent pitcher. His batting average I thought was interesting, 196, and he only had 1 home run. But the colors on this card are really, really, obviously I don't think it would grade like this. The new PSA would not grade this a 4. You know, there's going to be somebody rich like Elite Co or somebody that breaks out cards and then resubmits them just to prove the point as to how hard it is become, because I think PSA is rounding down entire grades. There was an interesting interview by the baseball card investor, which I'm not a big fan of, but I think he actually has done a lot of harm to the hobby. But he interviewed the gentleman that is now at PSA, and I would probably encourage you to watch that video just because everything they said there I think is the opposite of actually what's going on. But I'd be curious what other people think. All right, let's get into some really fun ones. This is Henry Heine Manouche, and he's a Hall of Famer. In many instances in the 33 Goudey set, you have multiple cards from the same player. But he played for 20 years, 17 with the Tigers, was a minor league manager. He was a batting champion, and he was elected into the Hall of Fame on the Veterans Committee. He did have a .330 career batting average, and interestingly, he was a very good golfer after his career. That was the first Heine Manouche, and this one is quite a bit nicer. This is one of those things where you kind of look at it and go, maybe PSA standards haven't changed that much, but we all know they have because this is a beautiful card and only a 4. So But you'd like that. So that's one of his 2 cards there. And then this one is really a nice card, kind of a special card for me. This is Mickey Cochran, PSA 3. He was nicknamed Black Mike, one of the best catchers in Major League history. He had 3 World Series, 2 MVPs, and unfortunately his career ended abruptly when he was beamed and nearly died from a baseball to the head. He also went into the U.S. Navy in World War II, and can you imagine some of the guys today having to be going to a World War, be drafted? Can you imagine how many tears Tatis would cry if he had to actually do that? Or I don't mean to pick on him, but there's tons of these young players that they are just on the backs of guys like this who have, built the league. But apparently, I have to agree with Wesker Griff that Tatis is the greatest single player that has ever lived in the history of baseball, which I think is just funny. I loved Wesker Griff's video talking about that. There are just people who just don't watch the games or don't know the history of baseball, and they don't have to. But when they act like they know it, then it gets a little irritating. But anyway, this is Mickey Cochran. Beautiful card. You can just look at how the colors pop on that card. We're closing in on 100 years old for that thing. This is one of my favorite ones. Recently acquired this one just because Rabbit Marinville. I mean, if you look at the years, I mean, that might be. I tried to find out why his nickname was Rabbit, but that could be. I mean, I just love the yellow on these cards. You can see the paper loss a little bit on the edges, which I think is why I got a 4. But the color pops so nice that that's a pretty good grade for 33. But Robert was a Hall of Famer. He played 23 seasons as an infielder. That was a record that he held for a very long time until Pete Rose broke it. And in 1954, he actually was voted into the Hall of Fame with 82.94% of the vote. So he actually had quite a following. And then I know people have seen this, but one thing that I have noticed recently is that a lot of the really high quality Goudey cards have a lot of bleed through, the colors bleed through the back. This one does not have that. So I think one of the reasons, one of my really high grade cards that came back recently for PSA only was a 6, because it did have a lot of bleed, but man, it was just spectacular. And I would never try to read this small print on a YouTube video. In fact, I don't think I've ever read anything on the back of a Goudey, but anyway, I hope you like that. That's one of my faves for sure. And then lastly, everybody knows who this guy is. This is Mel Ott. Unfortunately, a half grade. You get what you get, but this is a tough card to get. So it's a fantastic picture, I think. This guy was off the chain. He was an amazing player, 511 home runs. He had a 304 career batting average. And New York Giants man, his entire career, he actually played and managed for the Giants from 1926 to 1948. He was a 12-time All-Star. Interestingly, he is in the Hall of Fame, and he led the league 6 times in home runs, which was pretty odd. Home runs weren't as prevalent. They didn't juice the ball back then like they do now. And so it was amazing that, he must have been quite a strong guy. So anyway, I'm hoping to get some more of my PSA orders back here shortly. I'm always interested in comments and thoughts on what people think, but I hope you enjoyed the video and have a happy July 4th. Bye-bye.